Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our Tuesday Namaste Village session. So happy to be here as always. Happy to be here now, in this moment. It's exciting, isn't it?
Yes.
Being here right now. When we're in the past or the future or milling about someplace where we aren't really, milling about in a place where we aren't really, that has nowhere near the excitement and the joy and the presence of being here right now. So we choose that. And I'm so happy to be able to join. And this morning, we're going to maybe explore a little bit more at what we did yesterday. Because as I expected, I got a lot of emails based on yesterday's session, comments on YouTube, people reaching out, basically saying, "How dare you?" I dare a lot of things. And one of the things I will definitely dare is to question the identity that asserts itself as real. And the way that the ego moves from here to there to somewhere else to try and keep suspicion at bay so that you don't quite realize what's happening. We think we're only defending ourselves. We're asserting ourselves, allowing ourselves to be who we are, when the reality is you're claiming what is not true, and you're allowing the ego to claim an identity beyond the only true identity that you could ever have and share, and that is the identity of wholeness and oneness.
We lost your picture too.
And suddenly I'm back.
Now you're back.
Not sure what just happened. That was a warning, someone said. Oh, I think I'm on the wrong one here. Let me change to another. All right, let's see if this helps. Isn't that interesting? I've been canceled. But just for a second, because the internet knows what's really going on here and brings us right back. I don't know if the rest of you saw what happened, but what we saw was that I was gone. I was kicked out. Anyway, yes, I got a lot of messages yesterday, basically defending the choice to create a new identity because the old one wasn't quite working as I had hoped. So let's make a new one that might work better. And all the lesson was that identity is not the solution, it's the problem. Right on. The way I choose to identify myself outside of all that is what keeps me from realizing the truth that is forever true. And the ego is insidious in this. The closer we get to the light, the closer we get to that full experience of oneness, of wholeness, the more it's going to shift into forms that feel appropriate, feel like they're going to give me something that the previous identity did not give. And once again, this ultimately is not about transgender issues. So please don't think that I'm transphobic, because it's not true at all. This has to do with a much, much bigger issue. Maybe we're using the trans situation as an example, but we could find 1,000 other examples in our lives of how we try to claim an identity to avoid the only true identity that is true, that we are the holy, perfect children of God, that I am that. I am that. So I want to begin, speaking of I am that, I want to read a couple of quotes that come to us from Sri Nisargadatta, the author of I Am That. Here's what he has to say. He says, there is no such thing as a person. There are many restrictions, there are only restrictions and limitations. The sum total of these define the person. Wow. The sum total of restrictions and limitations define the person. The person merely appears to be like the space within the pot appears to have shape and volume, and the smell of the pot. Like the space within a pot seems to have form, but does it? Do we seem to have form because we claim an identity and build a world around that identity, all the while denying that which is wholly true? One more quote from Nisargadatta. Give up the idea of being a person. I love it. That is all. No, that's no big deal, is it? Just give up the idea of being a person. He says it like, yeah, just go ahead. You need not become what you are anyhow. You don't need to become what you already are. There is the identity of what you are, and there's the person superimposed on it. The true identity that you are now, the I am presence. And then there is the identity that is superimposed upon it. All you know is the person, the identity, which is not a person. You do not know, for you never doubted, never asked the crucial question. What am I? Who am I? Where am I? And the answer is, I am that. I am here now. Now, for each and every single one of us, the simple and single answer to the release of these identity forms that we claim to hide from the true identity that we are now and forever is love. And love is like a mountain. There are many paths up that mountain, but we are all climbing. And we're climbing to the pinnacle of the full experience of love beyond all identities, beyond any need to claim that which I am separate from the great I am. Now, last night I was at a group, and someone brought something up that I'd never heard before, and I thought, well, that's perfect for this discussion. And it's something called the death zone. The death zone is a mountain climbing expression. And it refers to a zone when you're climbing, let's say, Mount Everest, a zone that starts at about 8,000 meters. It's pretty high. And you get to that point, and everything in you says, turn back. Don't go any further. If you do, you're going to die. But still, there's the pinnacle. Your body's going to start reacting very dramatically. It will take you a half hour to tie your shoe because there's just not enough oxygen. You can't breathe in the same way when you reach the death zone. To try and melt some snow to make something, tea, whatever it might be, will take an hour because you can't move at the same speed as you could outside the death zone. And once again, everything in you is going to be saying, go back to safety, go back to who you thought you were. But there's the peak. And the truth is, you do have what it takes to move through this experience, but you need to know that everything in you is going to rebel. It's going to be screaming at you. Don't go any further, you'll die. In fact, On Mount Everest, 80% of the deaths that take place are in the death zone. That's why they call it that. But those who reach the pinnacle, those who brave that rebellion within, they are the ones who said, I am not going to stop. I'm going to go for it. And they move through it and they reach the pinnacle of love. And in that moment, they can look down upon the created world and see it in a new way, see it from a perspective that very few people have ever seen it. And then they can come down and they can bring that perspective with them. You take someone like Nisargadatta. He is one who ascended that mountain, moved through that death zone. Jesus certainly is another, in a very dramatic way, moved through the death zone, and then came back to prove that the holy, perfect child of God cannot die. The truth within you, not your identity, because your identity is going to shift and change and be gone tomorrow. And your identity's body, the same. But who you are, deathless. The only true identity that you ever claim, that of holiness and truth and reality itself. So here we find ourselves now, most of us, approaching that zone. I look at Judy, they're like, oh, here we go. And yeah, there is that feeling of, oh shit. I'm there. If I keep going, if I keep pushing, I'm going to lose my identity. I'm going to lose who I think I am. Yes. Yes, you will. And for a moment, that's going to feel like the most horrible, dramatic, terrible thing ever. Keep going. Don't stop. You have everything in you to reach the pinnacle of love, but you have to risk everything that you thought you were to get there. You're not going to be able to breathe in the same way because the rarefied air in the death zone is very different. There's very little oxygen or very little of the things that you relied upon to hold your identity in place. But keep moving because you're almost there. It's when we are so close to the top, to the pinnacle of this experience, that everything in you is going to push you back. You're going to have every temptation. Well, maybe if I just change my identity. Now, I understand the subtleties and maybe I don't understand the things that make someone choose to live as the sex that they weren't born in, and I'm not claiming to. What I'm saying, I'm using that as an example to show what we all do in trying to move the identity around like the pieces on a chessboard. Thinking if I just change this or I change that position or the way I look or whatever it may be, it's going to give me what I want. But all that really is you're approaching the death zone and it's saying, everything in you is saying, go back. Don't go too far because you will lose who you think you are if you do. Yes, you will. You will indeed. But what you will discover is so much more, an eternity more, the truth that has always been true. So if you find yourself approaching that feeling, that experience, that zone, where everything in you says, don't go there. Just change this and change that, and then you'll be fine. Be a warrior. Be a light warrior and keep going. keep climbing. You may not be able to move in the same way. You may not be able to breathe in the same way, but you'll make it. If you believe in yourself, don't try and change anything. Just be who you are as you are known by God. So, yesterday, Vicky suggested that I invite someone up from the Namaste Village group to share their perspective. For some reason, Vicky thought this person might have an interesting perspective, and he probably does. And that's our brother Jet. Vicky wrote to me saying, get Jet up there. I want to hear what Jet has to say about this. So I asked Jet if he would join me, and of course, being the willing, amazing soul that he is, Jet, come and have a seat.
Give me a hug, Daddy.
Stand up 1 second.
Okay.
You got something. There you go. So I think most of you know our brother Jet. If you don't know him by face, you know him by feet. And those of you watching the Zoom can probably always see feet dangling above the crowd. So I think Vicky was curious what you thought yesterday about the whole transgender identity that has caused such a commotion. Do you have any thoughts about that?
Well, first, can you hear me without the mic, James? And, I just was under Yogananda with my body in the death zone. So I was doing yoga posture for 5 minutes, very advanced, difficult yoga posture with this body while you were talking about that death zone. And I'm like, wow, he's talking about what I'm experiencing, because I push the body into these crazy postures every day. And I thought instead of talking myself, I'd bring you the words of Yogananda, because he's right on that wall. And what he says is the chapter in this book called Metaphysical Meditations is, I am not the body. And what he says is, beloved God, I know that I am not the body, not the blood, not the energy, not the thoughts, not the mind, not the ego, not the astral self. I am the immortal soul that illuminates them all, remaining unchangeable in spite of their changes. Eternal youth of body and mind abide in me forever, forever, forever. More and more I will depend for energy upon the limitless supply of the inner source of cosmic consciousness, and less upon outer sources of body energy. So it's so subtle, this energy inside, to call out and say, oh, this body only sparks up for boys. This body only looks at boys and feels a spark inside. Therefore, I am that. And it's like, no, I'm not that, even though there's an impulse there. And I want God more than anything that this world can give me. So at this point, it's so subtle, and it's another trap, James. It's another trap to change anything about this dream, about this whatever it is that's showing up in the dream, this person. Nisarga calls it a person. It's not you. It's not who you are. And nothing has to change about the body for me to know myself today, for me to know myself as I truly am. And there's a joy in that it's too quiet for any storyline related to the body. There's no storyline left here. There's nothing that has to be done with the body at this stage of silence. So that's what I have to say about that.
Say that last part one more time. There's
nothing that has to be done about the body at this stage of silence, at that stage of silence, the stage of silence that all you want is God. You don't want anything else. You don't want people to like you. People like you, whatever. That's in your mind. That's in their mind. That's in the mind. That's more relativity to objects. And then you don't want that. You want God. You don't, if they like you, okay. If they don't, okay. Doesn't have anything to do with you, and it's not real. And then, so then why do I need to change the outer appearance of the body? Period, question mark, period. Nothing, no need.
Amen.
No need, no use.
Well, you are an example of this for sure. So thank you. So now you all know who Jet is.
Hey, James, can I address it real briefly?
Sure, come on up. We're going to go a little bit longer than normal because I got one more thing I want to share, but Kenneth wants to share something.
Because Jet and I are the two members in this community, maybe I can add my 2 cents. So, if this were 5.5 years ago, James, I wouldn't have been able to hear that. Okay, because the pain body was so great from my story, my parable, that I had walls up against the message you delivered yesterday. And 5 years in these spiritual communities, I've really felt like a fish out of water. Like, where are the other gay members? You know, because as soon as you mention, you know, the word Jesus, most of the gay men, you know, get triggered and they run the other way. I can hear that message now because of the way you delivered it. I can hear that message because what's the point I'm trying to make? I want to keep this real concise. I don't want to become real winded. Basically, it's to continue with what Jet. We can hear this now. I think this is a time where, you know, we can do this, but, you know, like back in the late 80s, when I was first coming out, the viscosity of the religious right was so dense that that I just want to celebrate this time when we can have these discussions, and a gay man like myself can sit through a beautiful dissertation and satsang like you delivered yesterday and say yes. Was that clear?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's basically I can let the love in today, you know.
Hey,
how did I do?
Wow, that's beautiful. You did good. You can let the love in instead of blocking.
Yeah. And in order to do that, you know, I'm not going to say it's been a bed of roses the last 5 years. I've had to face my own victim. And if a man came out in the late 80s, there is a reservoir of victim. But that only gives me the title today. I get to be the wounded healer. You know, not like I'm wounded, but you know, a reservoir of compassion. So I can sit, you know, when I sit and you see me, you know, in the third row, when you say non-compromise, that smile's real, James. All right, that's my 2 cents.
Thank you, brother. No compromise with this. No compromise. It's that slippery identity that gets us. In fact, let me, I was debating it yesterday if I should share this, but I decided that I would because it's a funny story. Vicky will remember this, and we'll bring Vicky in a moment. And we can see if I think she does, because this is something that happened to me when I first moved to Boston. Would have been back in 1994 when I followed Vicky from Wisconsin back to Boston. And I'll begin by saying there is this very interesting thing about canines, dogs. They have what's called a slippery gene. And that enables a dog, the size, the differences to be profound. You can have a tiny Chihuahua and you can have an enormous Pyrenees mountain dog or a Irish wolfhound. These enormous differences in size and the way they look because of this thing that they call the slippery gene. It allows for big changes to happen very quickly within the same species. Okay, we have what's called a slippery identity. In other words, the identity is not what we think it is. We think our identity is solid and strong and well established, and it's not true. And I did an experiment years ago to test this. It's kind of a crazy experiment. I don't want to suggest anyone else try this. But what I did was I chose 3 identities that were very, very different than this one, the identity of James. And I can remember what they were. One of them, her name was Jamie Thomas. Jamie Thomas was a transgender and was in the process of shifting to be a woman. And I went out and I bought a wig, a dress. This was crazy, even thinking about it. I can't believe I did this. I bought everything that I needed. And I was living in South Boston at the time. If you don't know much about South Boston, the Southie, if you watched Good Will Hunting, that gives you an idea. It's a tough neighborhood. And I decided that I'm going to spend the first part of the day dressed up and living as Jamie. In other words, I took a piece of paper and I had 200 questions that I asked about that identity, who Jamie Thomas is. And I answered all of those questions. What color is her favorite? What type of food she likes? All of this. And I clearly identified who Jamie is. And then I picked another character. I don't remember the other two as much. I know that one of them, his name was Jakub Pejakovic, and he was a Bosnian refugee that had recently come to Boston. I did the same thing. I mapped out his identity, so I would know exactly who he was. And then the third person was someone living in a shelter, homeless. Anyway, my goal was every day, I wanted to do this for a week. In the morning, I would live as Jamie, and I would throw myself into that form, knowing who Jamie was. And then in the afternoon, I would be Jakub Pejakovic, and I would change my outfit and dress as he would dress. And then in the evening, I would become this other person. I would sleep in the shelter. And then in the morning, I would change. I could only do it for about 3 days because I found some really interesting things that first of all, I found that I was losing James because I was only thinking like James when I was between characters. When I was changing costumes, that's when I would think like James. And when I was, let's say, for example, I was in the identity of Jamie, I was attracted to men. Now, I'm a heterosexual, I'm attracted to women, that's just how it's always been. But when I was in that identity full on, that changed. That slippery identity. When I was playing the role of Jakub Pejakovic, that changed completely again. And after about 3 days, I couldn't do it anymore. And I went back to my apartment. I took all the makeup off. But the thing that I realized, I found myself needing to play out certain acts that would reestablish the identity of James. The way I liked my coffee, this particular cookie that I liked from the bakery around the corner. I found I was desperate to go out and to reestablish me, this identity, because everything had gone slippery. It was quite the extraordinary experiment. Once again, I don't advise that anyone else try it, but it's an interesting thing to look at. We choose who we think we are, and that choice will affect everything. And anyway, Vicky, I don't know if you remember when I did that or not, but I would love to hear from you now.
Okay, Brother James, I think you were living with
Hold on 1 second, Vicky. Where's the, okay, go ahead, Vicky.
All right. I think you were living with Jim Yost at the time.
That is correct.
Right. Now, Jim Yost was a very enlightened brother whose mind was truly on his soul and on the love of God. So there aren't many other brothers at that time you could have lived with that would have fully supported you in this. But it was a wonderfully fun game to witness what we do to protect or to defend or to get more comfortable in body identity. and how flexible it all is. But the bottom line is either we're a soul and we can play all these roles, rich man, poor man, beggar man, thief, doctor, lawyer, Indian chief, or we can kind of smile at them all. And what you found is you go with it. If you went with every identity, you could have stayed in any of them because it's simply a choice once you choose a made-up identity, like we choose body identities, we don't think we do, but we do, we just go with it. And if we don't defend ourselves in any of the identities, we will come back to ourselves as souls. Because that's what the bottom line is of who we really are. Like in Yogananda's little thing there. We are souls of light and love. And the thing that we do as, say, spiritual aspirants of any tradition is hopefully we really make truth, God, love, whatever word we use, our goal. The top of Mount Everest, whatever it is, we keep our eye on the light, on the goal that we are. And instead of fooling around with the identities, let them be, let them rip. Just go with it. Go with it. Your impulse is here, go with it. As long as we don't defend against the made-up identity, I have found that it's always a sure road home. It's in defending the identity and trying to prop it up, make it better, change it, fix it, adjust it, that we distort that reality that is our natural love, our natural beingness, which is a soul of love. So let everything just be as it is. Whatever costume we end up in for the day, and if we just let it be, let it all ride. And so for me, my mind is, I want the truth. I want to be the love of God, wherever I am. I want that energy, that vibration to be my full awareness. I don't know how to do that. And by adjusting myself anywhere, I'm getting in the way. So just go with it and keep your eye on the truth. I am the love of God. That's enough in any tradition. And go with the prompts and with the impulses, not to fix and make, but simply to welcome and allow and let the reality of soul rise up in spite of the appearances, because when we don't put attention on the appearances, we are in touch with our nature as light, as souls, as love. And that we're just used to a life of defending and substituting and making changes and thinking we're making things happier. Don't worry about making things happier, just let them be. And go with it and keep your eye on the goal though. Let your eye be single. I want the truth and let it be love. What an easy thing. I want love. Let it be love. And everything in my, whatever I am, I'll use that. I'll use that. This is what I got. I'll use it. I don't need, everything else it's a delay tactic. Changing up our identities on the form level is just a delay tactic to the reality of ourselves as souls. So don't delay anymore. Take yourself just as you are. Big, tall, short, fat, thin, ugly, red hair, blue hair. It doesn't matter. Come as you are, party. God is right here. We are one with that reality. That's our reality. And this overlay, this plastic overlay that's superimposed on that reality, it's flimsy. If we don't strive for it, if we don't try to pay attention to it, just let it be, welcome it, it starts dissolving. That's all we're doing here. We're choosing to keep our eyes single and letting the body stuff dissolve. And we do that. I look in this gallery and I see my brother's souls because I see your eyes. I see your light. I see it. We all do. We see it in one another. It's in your whole composure. That's what we're learning to do. Let the body stuff be. That's all. All of it. All of it. The jobs, whatever. If I'm given a job to sweep the floor, all right, I'll sweep the floor. It doesn't matter. As long as we stop. Defense is a way of substituting and trying to make this level real. Allowing it allows it to start dissolving. And I want it all to dissolve. And any vehicle I'm in, however it is, that's good enough for me. And any vehicle my brother's in, that's good enough for me, because I'm looking at my brother, my soul, the brother I am one with. That's it. Thank you, Brother James. Thank you, Jet. Thank you, Jet. Just so wonderful to see you. So wonderful to see each other open our hearts and share, because we share the love that we are. That's it. Thank you.
We share the love that we are. Thank you, Vicky. And once again, do what you want to do. If someone wants to live their lives in a different identity, great, do it. But keep your eye on the top of that mountain. One final thought is that we are all the greatest method actors in the universe. Did you know that? We take on an identity and we live it as if it's real, and we think in that identity, and everything happens within the construct of an identity. I think of my favorite actor, who is Daniel Day-Lewis. I think he's the greatest actor in the world. And when Daniel Day-Lewis takes on a role, he becomes that character. He does not leave character the entire production of that film. So when he plays Abraham Lincoln, for example, he becomes Abraham Lincoln. And I think they shot that film for like 6 or 7 months, maybe more. So for all that time, his wife had to sleep with Abraham Lincoln, because he would talk like him, he'd think like him, act like him, just as I was in that experiment. To the point that when they finished shooting, when they finally wrapped, it took him several days to get his Irish accent back, because he immersed himself so completely in the character of Abraham Lincoln. And that's what we do. We're amazing method actors, and that's okay. There's nothing good or wrong or anything about that. Just notice it, but keep your eye on the top of that mountain. And when you feel that urge to go back, because you feel like you're going to die, you feel like you're about to lose yourself, who you claim to be, keep going, because at the very top, there is only love. So thank you, everyone. I'll be curious to see what emails I get today. So we love you. Why don't we do our prayer of protection as a closing? So if you want, just you can stand, you can sit, you can do whatever you want, but let's join together in this beautiful prayer. The light of God surrounds us. I am the light of God. The love of God enfolds us. I am the love of God. The power of God protects us. I am the power of God. The presence of God watches over us. I am the presence of God. Wherever God is, I am, and all is well. Amen, amen, amen. Y punto. Thank you, everyone. Namaste.
Thank you. I love you all. Bye-bye for now.
Bye.
Love you.